Hey everybody, welcome back. So this is class 4. The title is Guidelines for Security Testing and Phases for Pen Testing. So I've broken this class into 4 parts. As I said, we already went through part 1 of class 4. Now we're going to go over part 2. And in this class, basically, I want to talk about different ways of identifying benefits for each test type. And then I'll talk about your prioritizing the system for pen testing. After that, I'll teach you how ROI on penetration testing works and how to calculate it. Finally, I'll help you determining the cost of each test type. All right, pretty interesting class. All right, so let's move forward. First is basically identifying benefits of each test type. Right, to make sure that the cost of penetration testing does not go beyond its value to the organization. The advantage of performing this penetration test must be qualified, or you can say quantified. All right. Again, you should be aware that your penetration testing cost is never exceeded, does not go beyond the value which your organization perceives it should have. So the overall benefit of penetration testing is to identify, of course, vulnerabilities, and that is before the attacker exploits them. So you have to expose it beforehand. So there are some factors that should be considered to assess the benefits of testing. First one is the knowledge gained about system and network while performing a test process will improve the organization's control on itself and its assets. So that is the first thing. So this is the first factor which you should consider, right? Another key thing to remember is that by testing and correcting the revealed deficiencies or vulnerabilities, an organization significantly decreases the possibility of any intrusion or business interruption, and thereby reducing the amount of vulnerabilities that can be exploited. So that's a very key important thing from an organizational standpoint. Next, I want to teach you is how to do prioritization, how to prioritize the systems for testing to start with the results of the security category. So the cost of conducting a test and the benefits are evaluated and ranked to prioritize the system, right? So the results severely are detailed, I would say. They should always be in a detailed analysis point, and also should have details about the weaknesses that are present within an organization that require immediate attention, right? So the results should serve that purpose. The analysis must provide a list of systems based on some of the factors, one being cost of testing, second being security, I would say security category, and lastly the benefits which the analysis should have part of the system, right? So when you are prioritizing the system for testing, the list will include required resources for conducting each type of test for each system. So initially, the organizations need to determine the minimum required resources for the minimum testing. So for these, the systems with the highest level of impact needs to bubble up. Then it should identify and compare the resources of security testing with the required resources which are needed. So in both of these resources are not sufficient to carry out the test process for, I would say, high impact systems. So then the organization should gather additional resources to complete the security testing part of it, which is very vital. So the calculated cost for security testing will be the quantitative evidence for using more resources. So basically, you can see, like, after identifying the funding for most critical systems, objects with less priority are tested in descending order always, right? And the results of the final steps is based on the highest impact system. It could be that are tested, and it could be based on the related frequency and testing techniques which have been used down there. All right. So this is important to understand the prioritizing of your system for testing. Like, how do you prioritize different levels within a system? Next one topic, which is basically ROI, ROI on penetration testing. So ROI, that is return on investment. So ROI is a traditional financial measure based on historical data. So every company needs to have a ROI strategy. So it is I would say, like, a metrics that basically yields insights into how to improve business results for your future, for your company's future. And in reality, most organizations use one or more financial metrics that are referred to as individually, or you can say collectively, as ROI. So let's talk about these metrics, these different metrics which companies use. Number one is the payback period. So this is a common term which you need to be familiar with, and which you will hear a lot in this penetration testing when talking about ROI. So payback period, right? What is it? So the amount of time required for the benefits to pay back the cost of the project, right? So the benefits of the project to pay back the cost which are associated with the project is called the payback period. Another one is called the net present value, NPV, net present value, the net present value. So this is the value of future benefits reported in terms of today's money, like how much money you have today, and the future benefits which are reported against that, NPV, net present value. The third one is the IRR, which is the internal rate of return, IRR. Basically, IRR is the benefits reported as an interest rate. All right. So three key things, payback period, NPV, and IRR. NPV is your net present value, and IRR is internal rate of return. Okay. So let's talk about ROI, that is the return on investment. So return on investment is the ratio of the net gain from a planned project and its total costs. So the purpose of a penetration test in an organization is to discover and expose vulnerabilities in an organizational security system, and they are considering the company's information assets and how those assets are related to the business value of the organization, right? So for calculating of the TCO, that is total cost of ownership, a comparison of security investment and the potential damage prevented is performed, basically to do the total TCO, that is the total cost of ownership. So this basically comprises the cost of loss to the company's assets with the cost of preventing those losses. So those are to be calculated side by side, or to be compared side by side. So through a penetration test, the knowledge of possible risk, vulnerabilities, or threats to the information assets, which always sometimes referred to as IA, that is information assets, right? This is not, this is IA, information assets. And also the information required to mitigate those risks is acquired. So basically TCO, the total cost of ownership, is very key, right? So you have your cost of the losses to the company and the assets which could prevent those losses. And this is all done through a penetration test and the knowledge of the risk which is associated with it, which is very important when doing ROI on penetration testing. So next, let's look at determining costs of each of pen tests, right? So how can we determine the cost of each of test types? So let me tell you that the cost of penetration test depends on a few factors. First being the size of the organizational system to be tested, such as local area network, wide area network, single database, or major applications, right? Next we should be aware of is the complexity of the system. For how complex the system is, the system which you're testing, and the skills required for the penetration tester engaged. So the more complex the system, the higher level of skills or specific level of skills you will require for them to successfully do penetration testing on the system. So these are some of the level expertise also kind of related to the cost. So this is how you determine the cost of each type of test, right? So basically it is important to have a good understanding on the level of human interaction required for each test, and also selecting sample hosts for penetration testing that you're doing. So as a pen tester, you should always know the duration of time spent in performing your penetration testing, while keeping a very good eye on the scope of the engagement and the other associated costs, or you would say like travel expenses and so forth. So you should always have a full grasp, a full understanding of what you're trying to do as a penetration tester. All right. So I hope you have good knowledge about how to perform penetration testing. Some areas where you should always keep a lookout for. So this brings us to the end of part 2 of class 4. I'll see you next class. Thanks for watching.